야, 바람 엄청 분다, 야. 여기는 어디냐면, 여기 이제 덤바튼이라는 지역이고, 요게 덤바튼 지역의 이제 상징 같은 게 덤바튼 락이라고. 그래서 여기 이제 덤바튼 락을 이제 모티브로 하는 이제 독병 회사가 있습니다. 드랩모 컴퍼니라고 이제 내가 아주 친한 회사 중에 하나인데, 저기 사장이 이제 케니 맥도날드라는 사람이고, 이분이 그 덤바튼 증류소에서 일을 했었어. 그리고 지금 이제 발렌타인의 마스터 블렌더 샌드 히슬로 아저씨랑 같은 이제 동료지. 덤바튼 같이 일했던 동료였고. 그래서 저번에 한번 내한 오셨을 때 케니가 안부를 전해줍니다. 그러니까 그만 좀 찾아오라고, 캐스크 그만 달라고. 그래서 아무튼 요 드랩모는 이제 이 덤바튼에 대한 애정이 철철 넘치는 독병회사고, 지금 이제 나중에 가겠지만 이제 웨어하우스도 여기다가 그 지을 예정이고, 그 다음에 증류소도 요 덤바튼 락 뒷면에다가 요 뒤에 바로 그 축구 경기장 있거든. 축구 경기장 사이에 이제 부지를 마련했다 하더라고. 그래서 뭐 지금 지방 정부랑 계속 협의 중인 것 같은데 부지만 마련해 놓고, 하여튼 다들 이제 꿈이 있어. 뭔가 이제 증류소도 하고 독병도 하고. 와, 오늘 인터뷰도 할 텐데 도대체 어떤 마음가짐으로 하고 계신지 좀 물어보기로 하고, 또 이 지역이 또 나름 발렌타인 성지라서 나중에 한번 또 발렌타인 찍으러 한번 와야 되겠다, 그지? 한번 베르노리카 아저씨들 부탁드립니다. 인터뷰 좀 하자. So nice to meet you again in sunny Scottish. Is a very rare. I think it's only 1 month.
Never happens.
Never
it's
happens.
so good. One day.
One day. So nice to meet you.
Good to see you again.
And then could you introduce yourself and your brand?
Absolutely. So my name's Kenny McDonald. I am co-owner along with the boss sitting beside me,
Boss.
Victoria, of Dramore. So Dramore are an independent bottler of single malt, single cask strength, unchill filtered Scotch whisky.
You know, for Korean the customers, they want to know why we choose the Dramore, and then the many questions for there. So first of all, what is your why you choose the big casks, the taste or the profile why you want?
I'm not too worried about the profile, if I'm being honest, because whiskey is an adventure, it's an experience. And I think too often we all concentrate on these one big name brands. And you stick to drinking that one thing and you never learn about the real treasures out there. For me, the absolute importance is quality. The way we pick casks is purely down to the quality of the spirit. Now, many times the spirit will be fantastic. The oak, maybe a little bit weak. So it's my job to look at that spirit and think, what oak does this need to really showcase its perfect character? Once you're finished with the right spirit and the right oak, you've just got a thing of beauty, which you're not going to get from a standard supermarket whiskey.
Yeah. So because here we charge the tax by alcohol.
Yeah.
But in Korea, they charge by the price. So that's why it's, sometimes the people very hard to buy because expensive.
Which I can understand.
Yeah. So we, the Korean guys, always choosing the heavy sherry, and then high strength, and then very famous distillery. So what is your recommend to choose the independent bottling, to enjoy the whiskey, about which distillery you recommend? It's very hard to find.
I would say there are maybe two different ways to say why you're going to benefit by drinking the independent bottler to the big standard distilleries. One, you're not going to get oak overkill. So you said it yourself, big heavy sherries.
Yeah.
They're so heavily sherried it could be any whiskey in the world. You would never know, because all you taste is sherry.
Yeah.
Now, I'll be honest, if you go out and buy a bottle of sherry, it's going to be cheaper, and you'll taste sherry.
Yeah.
But that means that that distillery style doesn't get the chance to sing. It can't tell its story. When you go to these maybe slightly less known distilleries, then what you find is flavour profiles that you've never experienced. And it's one of these things that when you discover them, you can never go back to where you were, because the quality and the experience is so much greater than if you drink a standard distillery dram. Okay, if they're just starting out, I think for me one of my favourites would be to point them towards Balvenie. Balvenie will give you...
But not in independent bottlers.
No, if they're just looking for something to start off at really basics.
Okay.
For us to get Balvenie, certainly nameable Balvenie, incredibly difficult. William Grant will protect that name for them and their own. If they're looking to start with their independent bottling, then what they really should do is get away from the big heavy sherries and look to the lighter bourbon maturations. Because in these drams, you're really going to taste the character of the distillery and the distillate, rather than just this big oak. And that's when you start to learn. That's when you really start to appreciate the quality and the expertise that goes into making these whiskies.
Okay. It's a very hard to answer, right?
It is, but at the same time,
Yeah, what do you think?
To go to like a Dalmunach,
Dalmunach?
difficult to get.
Manachmore.
Manachmore, yeah.
Yeah, you suggest to the the customer to suggest Manachmore?
Manachmore because it's light, it's floral, it's fruity, it has all the elegance of Speyside whiskey. So I think that would be a good starting point. And usually a lot of independent bottling Manachmores, they are really honest drafts. And it's a good way to experience that distillery through independent bottling. Because from Diageo you will get one or two core expressions, and that's it, that's the limit. So there is nowhere else to go.
It's not even core expression, you'll only find it through flora and fauna. The same with Blair Athol, the same with Ben Rinnes. These are all really good, easily approachable and not overly expensive independent bottling drams, which you will get single cask, unchin filtered, natural colour, just straight from the cask to your glass. That's where they should be starting.
Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. I know because this question I questioned every time they interviewed.
Yeah.
But the two types, very easy to say. Yeah, Lincoln is good for star.
Yeah.
And the one is very hard to choose. Like I know.
It's so difficult because
Yeah.
there are so many different things I would love to try.
You know, we have in Scotland over the 100 distilleries there. The Indians, the brand, cask, and distillery. It means we can choose more. 10,000 bottles in the world. Not easy, you know.
Easy. So you've got to start at number one and just aim for number 10,000. And good luck.
When you are determined to cask finish, what is the makes? What do you want to expect to finishing?
It's a little bit like trying to do a jigsaw puzzle with no picture. So you've got to look at the spirit, understand the complexity, the character in the spirit, and then try and identify what's missing from the oak. So normally we'll buy a cask that's second, maybe even third refill bourbon. So it will have very little interaction with the oak. What I've got to do is look at the spirit, the weight of the spirit, the character of the spirit, the flavour profiles in it, and then match up the correct oak. So there is never one, not even one distillery that you can say, well, every Dalmunach should work really well with every bourbon. It's not going to work that way because every cask is unique. It's its own character, its own personality. And I've got to listen to the story it's telling me. And it tells me where it should be going. Sometimes, yeah, bourbon is the right way. Other times, maybe I look at a gentle sherry like a Paolo Cortado, or maybe even a very gentle red wine barrique to really bring that back to life again.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then, so I interviewed many professional guys in the Scottish industry, but I want to know the plan, your brand and your company in the future. What do you plan to do?
Oh, world domination. No, as things stand, we are one of the smaller independent bottlers, but we've been in the business now for 13 years. Only 5 of them is bottling. But we've now grown to over 20 countries that we're represented in, and the entire company are sitting here. It's just the 2 of us. So the next step has to be to start to grow, not just physically as a company, but what we can offer different marketplaces. Because at the moment, if I bottle 1 cask, I might get 250, 260 bottles. Nothing else. If I cut that between 20 countries, it's not very much for anybody. What I would like to do is, for a market such as Korea, is to grow the market so that we can have a full outturn bespoke just for you guys. And that means that we can then start to tailor to the flavours that the Korean whiskey drinker really enjoys. And they will have something that no one else in the world gets. It's just for them. And okay, it's still only 240, 250 bottles, but you're getting something which no one else on the planet gets. And if we can start doing that for each part of the world that we work in, we're going to have some very, very happy whiskey drinkers out there.
Yeah, very nice. And then how about the facilities?
The main thing that we need to do to actually get that working is we need our own warehouse. It's been very difficult. We've been fighting now for over 2 years, but we're very, very close to getting the ideal site that we've been looking for a long time. If we get that, we're in charge of our own re-racks, we're in charge of our own sampling, we're in charge of our own bottling. We can do everything in-house, and that gives us so much more freedom, as it's very, very expensive for us when we're working with third-party warehouses. Even just to draw 1 sample can cost us more than £70. So if we're constantly pulling samples of each cask, the money's got to then go on to the price of the bottles we sell. If we're doing this in-house, we can control the costs, and it means we can then pass these savings on to our customers. We can produce much more whiskey at a very, very competitive price at home.
And then I heard from in the future, near future, you make a distillery.
That's the key. I think if anyone's really serious in this game, independent bottling, for all I love doing it, and it's a wonderful experience and it's a wonderful adventure. If you're really serious in the whiskey industry, you've got to take it to the next step. And the next step, logically for us, instead of using everyone else's spirit, is to use our own spirit. So there have been small plans put in place. Nothing as yet that we can say is concrete, but it is something that's very much in here at the moment.
Progress.
Yes.
Oh, summer is finished. That's it, summer is gone. It's gone.
Yeah, this is a Scotland. What else? So one more question for I asked for customer who drink a Star the first, and then what is important thing for the independent bottler? Do you advise some who I want to bottle some cask from the bottle? And
there are some places where I would love to get whiskey. A real favourite distillery of mine is Talisker. very, very difficult to get Talisker. And if we could get it, the price becomes that expensive that I couldn't really bottle it and sell it. It'd be too much. I would love to play with toys like Little Mill and Old Rosebank and Old Port Ellens. But again, I want to produce whiskey that everyone can afford to buy and enjoy. If I'm playing with these very expensive toys, then only people with very large wallets can ever enjoy these whiskies. And that's not really what Drumore is all about. Drumore is about allowing people who, whether they are at the very beginning of their whiskey journey or have been enjoying whiskey for decades, they can all have something which is bespoke, that's unique, that's incredibly good quality, but it's not so expensive that they look at it and go, oh, I can never afford that. They can always afford to have that little special, unique dram.
Okay. For this time, I hope they introduce your brand, and then. But the more important thing is, I want to introduce the independent bottling because too many companies in Korea. Think about 15 years old and 20 years old. We in Korean market just imported 3 or 4 brand in the Korean market, and then most of the brand is quit.
Yeah.
No good sales, and then the bartenders or shop they explain once more because we just choosing, the people think about the distillery is the brand. So for example, Glendronach.
Yeah.
Glendronach is brand. Glendronach is a distillery. But if you choose the independent bottling, the brand is different and then distillery is different.
Yeah.
What is the means? So bartenders or shop owner need to explain once again. And it makes the owners very tired. So they don't want to sell anymore because it means that each people doing like a brand ambassador.
Yeah.
It's very, very hard job for them. So now the people know the brands, people know the distillery, and then they find in the internet, and then they want to try the cheap, sometimes very cheap one, sometimes about the value for cost. So it's very, very, very competitions.
Yeah, which I understand.
So I want to let them know. So what is your the policy or what is your profile you want to bottling? So because sometimes people like a distillery, I like Kurila, but you can suggest the similar profile you can find in the store shop.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That is very, very important to someone to teach them or someone let them know the which is the flavor you like, and then someone suggests to you, and then someone's customers. It's very important, but no one do that before.
I think it's very, very common in every single market where they're just really starting to grow their love of Scotch whisky. It's not just Korea. Every market goes through what you've just said, where they will concentrate on 3 or 4 big brands. Even if you look at somewhere like the United States, they're still completely caught up in Bowmore and Macallan. And it's all to do with education. And that is the most important thing, not just for Victoria and me, but for every single one of us who are involved with Scotch whisky, is that education. I know that when you're having to say something for the 15th time, you're thinking, oh, really, do I have to do this again? But that's what selling is. Now, that's whether you're a bartender, whether you're a shopkeeper, whether you're a brand owner. Doesn't seem to be there anymore because people don't want to educate their customers. They want to do what's easy. They'll buy that, that's fine. But then you're never growing that market. And it's massively beneficial to the bartender and to the retailer if that market grows. because they then have many more sales because they've got an educated consumer market. Any consumer market who don't have that education, or they don't have that insight into what they're buying, will always buy one TV, one car, one pair of jeans. They'll never look for anything else because they don't know anything else exists. So from my point of view, it's massively important as a brand owner to try as much as we can to educate the consumer as to what we have. So, you know, the one thing I would say about every single spirit which goes into a bottle of Drummoor, if the spirit is not exceptional, it doesn't get bottled. Whether it is Rue Mort, which is a peated Glenturret, which will be very close to some of the Islay whiskies that you'll imagine and know pretty well, but this time the smoke is much more rolling bonfire smoke, softer, rounder. You can go to some of the stunning Highland Ben Nevis's big, bold, robust drams. The Ben Rennesses, through worm tub condensation, that it becomes more mouth coating and creamy. So all these different spirits, you can't just point at one and go, that's great. It might be, but so's that one, and so's that one, and so's that one. And for me, the beauty of only having less than 300 bottles is you don't have the option to just keep going back and buying the same thing. Okay, when it's gone, it's gone. I could take a Ben Rennes, put it in a Buffalo Trace bourbon cask. When it's sold out, take exactly the same age and exactly the same strength Ben Rennes, put it in the same kind of bourbon cask, and it would be completely different.
Yeah.
Because every cask is unique. So you never try to copy or replicate. What you do is you allow the spirit to tell the story. And as whiskey drinkers, we've got to learn to listen and allow that whiskey to tell its story to us. And no one wants to read one book. They want to read 1,000 stories. And that's what whiskey will do. It will tell you 1,000 stories if you give it the chance.
Great answer. Thank you. And then for the last, tell some, say hello about the Korean subscriber.
Well, I know you're way over there, and we've got a pavement between us, so I might be interrupted. But to all of you over there in Korea, thank you so much for listening to my nonsense for the last 10, 15 minutes. And I very much hope one day that I get the chance to come, sit down with you guys, and we'll share a dram together. And then we'll let the stories start coming. Until the next time, I hope to see you over there. Sláinte.
Thank you. 뭐 사실 볼 거 없는데 여기가 아까 그 드랩모 사장님이 이제 여기다 지을 거다 해가지고 이제 땅 샀는데 뭐 여기 지방 정부랑 뭐 싸우고 뭐 속도가 느리고 어쩌고 내가 알기로 이거 진행한 지 벌써 2년 차인데 아직도 기약이 없대. 내년에는 할 수 있을 거라 그러더라고. 아무튼 그렇게 크진 않은데 저 뒤에까지 다 허물어 가지고 하면 그래도 캐스크 한 1000개 정도까지는 아마 저장할 수 있을걸? 얼마나 큰 그림을 그리고 계신지 모르겠다만 아무튼 딴 데로 가보자고.